Welcome to The Beautiful Mess, where we talk about tools and tactics to improve your life. I'm your host, Paul Dittus, and I welcome you aboard as we talk about minimalism. And in particular, is minimalism going out of style? There was a comment that I had on a YouTube video that basically said the phrase minimalist makes normal people want to puke. Yeah, lovely. So that's one comment I got on one of my YouTube videos. It was just, I alluded to one of this tech thing that I was reviewing was the minimalist version. It was the best minimalist choice. So someone took offense to me using the word minimalist. So that was interesting. And then I believe it was a little bit after that Matt Diavella, he was the one that worked on the Minimalist documentary. He's done two documentaries for the Minimalists. Both the first one I'd recommend watching. It was pretty good. And so he put out a YouTube video, and it's titled, "Is This the End of Minimalism?" And his thumbnail says, "Goodbye Minimalism?" ? And in that video, he kind of alludes to how the popularity of minimalism is kind of dying down a little bit, at least as far as like search. The amount of times people search the word minimalists or minimalism is not as frequent as it was, say, in 2015, 2016. And in those, it definitely ramped up, especially as that documentary came out. So yeah, that's definitely something to take in consideration is like, is it going out of style? Is it just a fad? Like, should you not even think about minimalism once, since it's going out of style, or is it something that's timeless? Is it something that you should consider starting today if you aren't already a minimalist? So we'll kind of dive into that a little bit here. So I guess like, how would I define minimalism? It's kind of like the pursuit of less so that you can live a more meaningful, wholesome life. To me, it's like this beautiful simplicity, because oftentimes we live in this consumerism, like, that mindset that more, I need to buy, the latest gear, the latest gadget. And if I don't have that, I'm not keeping up with the Jones or, whatever. It's like you fall prey to this mindset that more is better, but it's not always the case. If you had all the gold in the world, would that make you happy? Probably not. So it's something to keep in mind. In fact, as I was like preparing for this episode, I searched on Reddit to see what people are talking about, and this came up. It was somebody posted on Reddit. Basically, the topic was like, rather than seeing items as objects, see them as magnets for your attention. And the idea that came about was basically was James Clear, the person that wrote Atomic Habits, I guess, wrote in his newsletter this quote, and it says, "Look around your environment. Rather than seeing items as objects, see them as magnets for your attention. Each object gently pulls a certain amount of your attention toward it. Whenever you discard something, the tug of that object is released. You get some attention back." And I think that's very true. It's like, the more you allow things into your life, the more you allow it to, it requires your attention. And one of my history teachers talked about this idea that like everything kind of degrades over time. You think about civilizations, eventually they kind of degrade if they are not kept up, if you do not do maintenance. Your car will break down if you do not keep it up. So I think, minimalism, it can be a good reminder for how to live a meaningful, simple life, so that like you're not merely mindlessly consuming whether it's content, whether it's materials, like, your books, you name it. Like, minimalism can be applied to many different aspects. So I think like what the pain point that minimalism kind of answers is like, people, like when they fill their lives with so much stuff, like they can't help but feel like maybe a little bit of an emptiness. They realize that, every time they get that new thing, they all of a sudden have this like maybe a release of dopamine. They finally succeeded in getting that thing that they desired. But in the end, it probably, doesn't leave them fulfilled. It doesn't leave them feeling like this was enriching their life. It was just, this is what the culture is telling me I need. And we've switched from a mindset of like repairing things to replacing things. So like the lifespan of a single object is shorter than it was, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I don't know. Because like we're in this discard mindset. But there's some things in life that we shouldn't discard. There's some things in life that maybe we should repair. So I mean, is minimalism still popular? I definitely think that there is something to minimalism maybe going a little bit out of style. But I think that the idea behind it and the importance of living a meaningful life with less is ever present. Like you can really, benefit from reducing stuff. And like I was thinking about it before this episode, like what would be like 5 areas that I could just like point out to you that might be a good place to start. Like if you're interested in minimalism. So basically, some of the areas was 1, your email inbox. Your email inbox is probably bombarded with all kinds of emails, and it's like crazy how many emails you get. So what I would encourage you is go through your email, decide what is bringing you value. If there are newsletters that you no longer want, unsubscribe. Do not subscribe to them anymore because they will just keep on coming into your inbox. And then, you're just going to get tons and tons of emails every day, and each of them are trying to get your attention. And so the more you can reduce the stress of looking at your email, the better. So I'd highly recommend that. And then also on the front end of things, like consider before you sign up for an email, there's so many different places that you can put in your email address. I know a lot about it, from marketing standpoint. It's like you want to create like lead generators, and those are the things that you want to click on and get that one thing. Maybe it's a PDF, maybe it's, and that can be helpful. Like by all means, if you think that there's a helpful thing to get it, and then to assess the value of it. But like, if there's something that like you're on the fence, maybe just don't do it, because then you're going to have to deal with getting tons of emails that you might not be interested in. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing that I recommend being a minimalist about is your car. Be a minimalist for your car. So go through your car, empty out everything that you do not need in your car. Obviously, there's certain things that you need in your car. If they're for safety reasons, if they're for insurance, you name it, you can keep that in the car, obviously. But I'm telling you, in all likelihood, your car is filled with things that just, came in at one point and just never left. So I give you this encouragement to go to your car, tonight, tomorrow morning, and like go check it out and see what you can do to like either just clean it out, get a trash bag, get another bag for anything that you want to bring back in the house, or even maybe donate. But I encourage you, just like clean it out. There's no reason why you have to live with a dirty car, and just keep in that mindset. Don't let your car get dirty. So whenever you come back home from, maybe you went to fast food, who knows, you got like the bag and you toss it in the back. Don't let it sit there. Bring it in with you so it doesn't, haunt you for the next 5 weeks. And then another area is your finances. So at one point I had a couple of different credit cards. I'm a big fan of paying them off whenever, you get this, every single month. Just pay it off every single month. That way you don't, carry a balance if you're able. However, I had a couple different credit cards and I decided to simplify. As part of being a minimalist, I decided that I did not need to have, 3-4 different credit cards. I just needed maybe 1 or 2. So I encourage you, like, if you don't need to have that hassle of checking, 5 different accounts, don't do it. Simplify, reduce the amount of accounts that you have to check. The same goes with your bank account. If you want to consolidate, maybe you created one account just to get like a bonus or whatever, like sometimes, especially credit cards, like they give you that incentive to sign up initially, and then you just never close the account. So maybe go through and reduce the amount of accounts that you have. And yeah, simplify. And then lastly, your life. Just be more persistent about your yeses and your nos. Understand that whenever you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So it's very important to have a mindset of, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? Because your time is limited. Your time is one of the most valuable resources. And, sometimes we just throw it around like it's nothing. By all means, be generous. By all means, do things that are meaningful to you. But at the same time, don't feel like you have to say yes to somebody just because they asked you. You can be polite and just say, thanks so much for thinking of me. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do it. I can't make it this time. So, just be conscious of that. Like, your time is limited. Memento mori. Remember that you're going to die at some time. And how do you want your life to shape out? There's a song from Switchfoot, John Foreman. It's like, this is your life. Are you who you meant to be? Are you who you are meant to be? And I think that's like a great question to ask yourself. Like, am I who I'm meant to be? Like, this is my life. This is it. We got one shot for this life. So make the most of it. Like, if you're doing stuff that you hate, what can you do to, get closer to moving towards something that you love? This is something that we've talked about in earlier episodes about like finding work that you absolutely love, and not just becoming complacent, because it's so easy to just just drift. You're just like going through the motions. So think about that. Like, how can you minimalize? I don't know if that's a word. Be a minimalist in your life so that you can focus, do less, but better. And that kind of leads me to other areas that you can, experience minimalism, kind of in a different way, I would say. But like minimalism in art, minimalism in design, minimalism in music. So like examples of minimalism in design, I talked about him in another episode, but Dieter Rams, his idea of less but better and his 10 principles for good design. It's really interesting. So I encourage you to look up that. There's also a great documentary on Dieter Rams. I think it's called Rams. So that's a good example of a minimalist designer. Another person might be Johnny Ive from Apple, who was behind designing things like, a lot of Apple's products. And then you have art. You have art that's minimalist. There's music that's minimalist. I think of Philip Glass as an example of that. There's a beauty to that. It's kind of different than other art forms, because minimalism in music, there's not as much happening. It's more subtle. Sometimes they repeat things over and over again. But sometimes it's like the phrasing of the music, and you can kind of hear it as it maybe, takes you on a journey in a different way than, a piece by Bach, a piece by Beethoven. Maybe it's through the dynamics. Maybe they play the same chord progression over and over again. That's highly typical of minimalist music. But maybe like they're just like showing the movement in different ways. I don't know. It's an interesting style. I would recommend checking it out. Just it's neat to experience different kinds of art. Design minimalism is very beautiful. I really appreciate a beautiful, simple design. Things that like web design, the UI, UX, user interface, user experience, is a lot about creating a way for people to experience your website that's intuitive, that's simple, that's easy to understand. Apple's website is somewhat minimalistic, I would say. And one more example of a minimalist composer would be Arvo Pärt. His music's really interesting. He invented kind of this style called the tintinnabuli. Not sure if I said that exactly right, but it's like imitating bells. So it's pretty interesting stuff. So highly recommend checking out Arvo Pärt, and maybe Philip Glass would be two artists that I'd recommend checking out. And then as far as like minimalists that you can check out and like get more ideas on how to minimize, like maybe declutter your house, I would recommend checking out Joshua Becker. I believe it's Becoming Minimalist is his blog that he created. He's got some great resources on there. I think it's becomingminimalist.com. Check out his stuff. Great guy. And then also recommend, checking out the Minimalists. They got some fantastic resources. They've got a podcast as well. Matt Diavella, he's got some awesome, he's like a funny YouTuber. So be sure to check out his stuff. Highly recommend. And like maybe one of your concerns, like if you're starting to think about minimalism, this was interesting. An article from The Art of Manliness I read a while ago, that basically it talked about how there could be a problem with minimalism if, applied wrongly. So basically, if you were to apply minimalism in like a way that basically you end up thinking about stuff even more, or just about the same as like a normal consumer, because all of a sudden you're doing the reverse of, a consumer. You're thinking about how to get rid of stuff, and therefore your mind is on stuff again. It's just the reduction of stuff. So I believe it's just having a mindset of why you're doing it, and to always kind of circle back to the important reason behind being a minimalist. So maybe you're being a minimalist so you can focus more on things that matter, like your family, your friends. That there's a lot of things that get in the way of, having a meaningful life. If, you own so much stuff and it takes so much time to maintain it, it can become too much. So that could be a negative of minimalism, is like if you start thinking about stuff too much, even while you're trying to reduce it. So I would also explore the idea of essentialism. I'd highly recommend the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown. That's a fantastic book. And it's essentialism and minimalism are somewhat related, I would say. Let me see if I can give you a definition from, let's see. Okay, so yeah, the definition of essentialism is basically defined as less but better. That again comes from Dieter Rams, the designer, who's very much a minimalist designer. So, and then I believe this is a quote from the book. It says, "Only once you give yourself the permission to stop trying to do it all, to stop saying yes to everyone, can you make your highest contribution towards the things that really matter." Again, it's, you got to say no to things that are of lesser value to you so you can say yes to the things that matter the most to you. So yeah, that's kind of a quick dive into minimalism and whether it's dead or not and whether you should check it out or not. I think it's worth exploring. There's definitely areas of your life, if you minimize, I think you'd be happier. For example, if there's any clutter, I mean, and this is what people say often is like, minimalism isn't necessarily trying to get rid of all your stuff. It's like trying to live with less so that you can live a more fulfilling, more meaningful life. And that sometimes just means having a really clean and tidy house, which who doesn't want that? You can find your stuff a little bit easier. You have, a place and a purpose for your stuff. And so, yeah, that's it. So, hope you enjoyed this episode. If you do, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe, follow wherever you listen to podcasts. Write to me if you'd like. I'd love to hear from you. Maybe shoot me a message and, let me know if you're a minimalist or if you're pursuing minimalism. I'd love to hear what you think of minimalism. Yeah, that's all, friends. Let me know if there's anything else that you have. Maybe you have a question about minimalism. Be happy to answer it. Also, I'd love to have Spencer back on the episode. He's also a minimalist, so maybe we could talk about minimalism in another episode. Well, that's all, friends. Thanks so much for sticking around here. Until next time, stay messy.